Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We're just going to wait about 1 more minute just for a few more attendees to join. So please bear with us. We'll start very shortly. Thank you. Well, good afternoon again. Thank you so much for joining us today for our third webinar in our Cybersecurity Fundamentals series. Just before we begin, a small introduction to myself. I'm Lindsay Rhodes, Head of Client Advisory Services at Huon IT. I've worked within Huon IT now for over 20 years, from technical roles to solution architecting through to account management and many others. Happy to say that I now work with a very passionate team who strive every day to make our clients' businesses more successful and secure. Emil, if you'd like to quickly introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, look, thank you, Lindsay. Emil Barakat is my name. I'm the Director of the APAC region here at ThreatLocker in Australia, based out of Brisbane. I've got about 20 years in IT or ICT experience. So, but yeah, it's a pleasure to be here today alongside Lindsay and take you through our product.
Thank you so much, Emil. Now, before we get started, if you have any questions throughout the session today, please do post your questions into the Q&A panel. It should be accessible along the top of the Teams window. We will have a Q&A session at the end, but if we don't get enough time to answer all the questions, we'll try to answer them there or reach out post the webinar as well.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. So look, just to get started, I will go through a few slides, and my objective is to walk through a short demonstration of our solution today, or part of our solution today. So I'm certainly looking forward to that. Hopefully you are too. ThreatLocker, just a bit of background. We were established in 2017, and Zero Trust is our key or core focus. So Zero Trust, as you know, great buzzword. We've heard a lot about it in the last sort of several years. It's certainly evolving more and more. We've got a number of solutions that we offer as part of our platform that basically all echo and play to that zero trust methodology or mindset in terms of protecting your environment. The part or the core reason, I should say, as to why ThreatLocker was created and established was because we recognized that there were shortfalls in other forms of cybersecurity. So our co-founder, CEO, Danny Jenkins, used to run a ransomware recovery business. And it was out of all places in the world, Australia, where a situation occurred and he was called in to try and assist in a ransomware recovery incident, and wasn't as successful. And it was that incident that was the catalyst and the motivation behind establishing this approach to cybersecurity. Next slide, please. So our objective at ThreatLocker is to change the paradigm of security from default deny, allow, I should say, to default deny. And that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. We've seen the firewall model work with so much success throughout, the last several decades. And it's that same approach that we take, but with applications. Next slide, please. So when it comes to your environment, your machines, there are two main ways that attackers can penetrate your environment. One is open ports, and the other one is compromised applications or misused or vulnerable applications. And so with that in mind, we offer allow listing, which was basically the cornerstone of our solution stack, and again, why ThreatLocker came to be. So we will not just allow you to manage your applications and block bad software, but we're going to block unauthorized software as well. So it doesn't really matter if it's good or bad. What's more important is it authorized to run in your environment or not? So you could have perfectly fine software, but for whatever reason, you simply just don't want it to run in your environment. Now, there is a little logo that you can see in the bottom right there, and that's the Essential 8 Ready logo. And I've done that on purpose because I do want to remind everyone that when you think of Essential 8 and applications and user application hardening, application control, ThreatLocker is certainly at the forefront, at least in this region where that compliance framework is relevant, of course, to ensuring or helping you meet as many of those ISM controls as possible. So when you think about Essential 8 and your needs there, certainly think about ThreatLocker, and who on IT and ThreatLocker can certainly help you in that space. Next slide. All right. So whilst we offer, and I alluded to this a few minutes ago, many different elements across our security stack, the ones that I want to focus on today, and certainly in the demonstration, are three, and they are allow listing, ring fencing, and storage control. So with allow listing, as I mentioned, application control, it's very simple. We're going to block untrusted software. We're going to ensure, though, because there's a lot of hesitation when it comes to allow listing. Is it going to break my environment? Is it going to disrupt users? Are they going to bang on my door? Are they going to fire us, et cetera, right? Fire us as an IT outfit or as an MSP, but I'm sure, who on IT do a fabulous job, so that wouldn't happen. But basically, are the applications that you're authorizing to run set up properly? So that way you don't get any unforeseen situations where things are blocked and you can't do your job. The thing with allow listing is it's a very effective form of security when it comes to applications, but you want to strike that happy medium between flexibility and security, right? You don't want to go too hard in either direction. So you want to have that happy medium, that happy balance. And the applications, we can get so granular that they can be applied for permit or even denied for that matter at either a holistic org level or a machine level or a group level, right? So there are different levels in which you can permit or apply those policies, I should say, okay? And it's very simple around that process around requesting access for anything that isn't currently approved, but you do need access to. And again, don't want to steal too much thunder from the demo, certainly going to showcase that. Now, what happens with attackers is when they get onto your environment and they realize that they can't run their applications of choice, what they'll do is they'll turn to living off the land. And that's where ring fencing comes into play. So with ring fencing, what we're going to do is we're going to take those authorized applications, but we're going to limit and restrict what it is that they can do. So that way they can't repurpose or maliciously utilize and commandeer the likes of PowerShell or Command Prompt or C script or W script, etc. You keep those applications in check. You use them for what you specifically and strictly need to use them for, but anything that's not typically something that you'd need to do with those applications will be restricted. And I'm going to show you examples of that in this upcoming demonstration in a few minutes, okay? So there are 4 areas of contention. I'll focus on those in the demo. And then we've got storage control. Now, what storage control simply does is it limits or controls access to locations within your environment, including folders and even file types or files, okay? And that will also include different interfaces such as USB. So for example, if you're plugging in a USB storage device and looking to use one of those on your corporate asset, we can certainly put in control or in place controls around that to make sure that it's only being used for what you need it to be used. Okay, and then you can also monitor the reads and writes and the moves and the deletes that are occurring in the environment as well. So if you need to do a forensic analysis as to what might have occurred in an environment, whether it's the attack has been through your environment, okay, the remnants of an attack, that was the word I was looking for, or if it's an employee that's walking out the door, right? You can put controls in place, or you can at least get visibility as to what they're doing on their machine, okay? So I think that now takes us into the demo.
So,
right?
Emil, just before we do go into the demo, I thought it
Sure.
might be prudent for everyone's benefit just to understand why we've partnered with ThreatLocker, where we see these solutions having value. And I think, yeah, sort of beyond what you'll see today as value, and as Emil's just alluded to as well, look, a really common driver that we're seeing that has led to these solutions being deployed is Essential 8, as Emil mentioned. Obviously, if you're not familiar with it, and while there's many different frameworks that exist in cybersecurity, ISO 27001, PCI, etc. Certainly within this region, Essential 8 is a very common gauge of a business cyber readiness and resilience, I suppose. The Australian Signals Directorate, they've put this in place. While it's not a completely comprehensive framework by any means, it's rather just those key areas which can help you to decrease your threat surface. And again, we're seeing Essential 8 really be used more and more now within contractual reviews with a business's end customers and clients. We're seeing it through cyber insurance requirements, and really commonly now through boards that are asking this of their business, to meet these maturity levels of Essential 8. Now, not put too fine a point on it, there's three maturity levels in Essential 8. And one of the reasons that we've partnered so strongly with ThreatLocker is they get all the way to level 3. And other solutions do not. So again, it's one of these ones where we are working our way through something like Essential 8 as the framework. We know we've got a solution that's going to be fit for purpose and it's going to do what it needs to do. It's going to have a management benefit compared to some other solutions. Again, bearing in mind that we, in many cases, manage the environment. But likewise, if you're managing your own environment, some of these whitelisting and allow listing solutions out there can be quite a handful to manage. And we've found that ThreatLocker has really got some good systems in place to streamline that and to make that as seamless as possible. I think, realistically, when we're looking at this, you could take malware as an example, right? So with allow listing, obviously it can block ransomware, viruses, Trojans, like good stuff, zero-day attacks, etc. Because unauthorized applications just cannot run. Things like fileless attacks, malicious scripts, all these things that could bypass the more traditional antivirus solutions is where the solutions from ThreatLocker really come into their own. So before I let Emil jump into the meat and potatoes of it, I think it is, probably in summary, it is a part, but it's really a very critical component of a layered defense strategy. Is the reason that we're here today and talking about it. So
Yeah.
thank you, Emil.
Excellent.
I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
No, great point. Great point. And I think one of the key points you mentioned there is whilst you may not be in an area of critical infrastructure, Essential 8 is certainly a framework that more and more organizations are turning to, right? Because it really lays it out quite specifically for you as to, how to best protect your environment. So, it's pleasing to see that ThreatLocker and Essential 8 work well together. Okay, I'm just going to cut my camera off there for a moment, just so you're not looking at my side profile. So I am sharing my other monitor here. This is my demo environment. So like I said, I'm going to touch on allow listing, ring fencing, and storage control, but you will notice there are some other things that we do as part of our security stack. So first things first, we make the initial deployment and onboarding portion of the process very, very simple. So you will deploy an agent, okay, or through the efforts of the Who on IT team, they will deploy an agent onto your machine. And the first thing that happens is it goes into what we call application control learning mode. Okay, this is a very critical stage of the process because what we're doing here is we're understanding the environment that we've just deployed to, what's normal, what's running, and we're effectively cataloging a list of applications that are going to be permitted to run in that environment. It is all policy-based control. So when we move to an enforced state, which is the next part of the process after a number of days, your machine is secured, locked down, at which point you're being protected against malware, ransomware, and other threats and exploits. And it's at that point that we start to utilize these policy-based controls to determine what can and can't run within your environment. Now, I mentioned earlier that you can deploy policies and control what can and can't run at a machine level, an org level, or just maybe even a little group level. Right now, I'm in a specific group. At the very bottom of this group is the most critical policy of all, and that is the default deny policy. This is what allows us to stay true to that zero trust approach. We're denying everything else by default and only allowing what's needed to run in the environment. So you can see as I scan up and down this list, there's a whole bunch of permit policies as indicated by the green tick, but at the very bottom is the default deny policy, right? Now, as you scan up and down this list, another critical point that I want to touch on is the fact that you'll see the word built-in throughout this list. Built-in's the terminology that we use here at ThreatLocker that describes or labels applications where we manage the definitions for those apps. So that further simplifies the deployment process and the ongoing process of what ThreatLocker looks like in your environment on your machines. Because what this means is that, let's say I'm running Notepad++. It's a permitted application. It's utilizing our built-in definitions. It's a third-party application. It's not native to Windows by any means, but it means that past, present, future versions of Notepad++ will be seamlessly permitted to run. I won't be disrupted as an end user. I won't have to request access again and again every time there's a new version or update. Now, speaking of access, I'm going to jump into a short walkthrough of what the user experience would be like, as well as the administrator, ThreatLocker administrator experience would be like. Right now, I've attempted to run an ad hoc application that I've downloaded onto my machine post-securement. I don't have permission to do that. However, bottom right of screen, I've got a toast pop-up notification giving me the option to request access. So I'm going to go ahead and click on request access. Now, at the very top here, we can see the name of the file that I'm attempting to run, and I'm now going to request access for. We've labeled that software to the user so they can see that it's remote management software. And then over here, when we talk about Essential 8 user application hardening, these 4 areas of contention or concern are what we can address with ring fencing. And I'm going to get into ring fencing a little bit more in a few minutes, but I just wanted to point out that when you install software on your machine, it's going to be able to access not only its own files, but every single file on the operating system. It will be able to reach the internet. It will be able to write to your registry if it wants to, and it will be able to move laterally, calling other applications and even creating child processes. So when you think about that specific ISM control as part of Essential 8, where it wants to deter you or prevent you from creating child processes from Office, for example, we can nip that in the bud really quickly, okay, by addressing that. And I'll show you how we do that shortly. The countries where that software was compiled are noted here as well. Now, this is a bit of a hidden gem. Over here, you've also got the ability to view available applications. So if I click on view available applications, what we'll see firing up here is what we call the user application store or the application store. It's the ability to offer your end users immediate alternatives to what they're about to request access for from you, okay? So because I was about to request access for remote access or remote management software, by clicking on that link, it's taken me into the application store that you would custom build yourself, right? And it's given me alternatives that I can immediately click to get. And by clicking get, that's going to create a policy at the machine level immediately. It will allow me to download the software immediately. It will allow me to install the software with admin rights immediately and then run it thereafter. Okay, so that's something that you can create optional to seed off to your users. Now, the business problem that this will solve is the time, okay, that it would take to, send off a request and wait for someone to respond to that, even though it can be very, very quick. There's certainly a convenience factor. But the other thing is one of the biggest problems when it comes to software in any organization is the fact that you've got segmented teams, marketing teams, things like that, that will go out and purchase their own software, okay? And that software hasn't been vetted. You don't know if they're running MFA. You don't know what information, sensitive potentially, that software is going to ask for and take off of your environment. And so Allow Listing certainly addresses that. But, purchasing software outside, that approval regime or process is certainly a problem too. So this can, address a few of those factors at the same time. So over here, a user can type in a message to the administrator, hopefully something with more substance than that. They can input their email address for notification purposes, and they can send that request off. So that request will be met from the team managing your environment. It arrives here in the response center. It's an execute request. They can click on that, and it's over here that they can start to evaluate that software. They can expand on the file details, and they can check the reason that was given. They can wash it against VirusTotal. They can even download a copy of the file to their environment as well. They can check insights to understand where else in ThreatLocker's many customer environments is this file being used, anonymized data, of course. They can spin up a sandbox to perform simulated testing and vetting of the application, which comes in handy, especially if there's malware involved. So why test it in a local environment when you can test it in a cloud-based VDI environment well away from your local machine? But then what we're looking for is, does it match anything, right? So we see in this list that it matches TeamViewer, which is exactly what the software is, and it's what we call a built-in. I mentioned built-in earlier, where I said we at ThreatLocker handle the definitions of those built-in applications. So by selecting built-in, once again, means that you will never have to worry about having to keep those definitions up to date, okay? And then following on from there, do you want to apply this policy to allow TeamViewer to run on only the machine that made the request, or a specific group of machines, or maybe the entire organization, okay? Now, the Who on IT team will simplify all this for you. They'll do all this lifting for you anyway, right? But for any of you that aren't currently managed by them, this is just further insight as to what that process looks like. One of the things I love about our solution, as trivial as it might seem, is the fact that you can schedule policies based on whatever suits your business hours and needs. So for example, TeamViewer being remote access software, quite risky, right? Do you need that remote access software to run 24/7, or do you only need it to run in accordance or in alignment with your help desk hours, or the help desk hours of when you're getting support, right? The more and more clients I talk to, it's certainly the latter, right? They don't need to run that sort of software around the clock. So you can schedule it to run potentially between 8 and 8, Monday to Friday, or whatever those hours that make sense to you are. And then you've got the ability to elevate TeamViewer only to runners with admin rights. So that way, there's no need to remote in and enter admin credentials. You can just provide that just-in-time access and allow it to be elevated as needed. Once you're comfortable with your selections, you click on approve. You can modify the message back to the user, submit that approval message and response, deploy the policy updates, and the user, keeping in that theme of simplicity, will receive, bottom right of screen as you've just seen there, another Toast pop-up notification indicating that they're now ready to go ahead and run TeamViewer. Very, very simple. Just in the interest of time, I won't do that. But I do also want to harp on the point of our sandbox environment. In the interest of time, I haven't gone through that, okay? But it is quite a unique part of what we do here, because obviously one of the key objectives is to keep your environment safe. And so because we uh, pro provide I could say provide cybersecurity services more from a preventative approach rather than a response to something that has been detected, it makes more sense to reduce that surface area of attack and ensure that you are, running as risk-free as you can to your environment. So that sandbox in the cloud, which you don't need to do anything additional in order to have access to, comes very handy, and we'll automatically move that file across to that sandbox without you having to do anything extra as well. Now, speaking of reducing the surface area of attack, that's exactly what ring fencing does. So that's the second part of our application control that I want to segue into, whereby those 4 areas of contention or concern that I mentioned, we're going to address those, right? Very specifically, very directly. So back to my policy list. Next to many of the permitted policies, we see yellow icons. The yellow icons indicate that ring fencing has been applied to those, right, to those specific policies. Now, clicking, for example, on the office policy here, we can see that, yes, it's permitted, but it's permitted with ring fencing. So as soon as I permit with ring fencing, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 additional controls that I can turn on for any specific policy. In this case, I've only turned on one control, which is that lateral movement / child processes control that I've added to the mix there, right, to the policy. So you've also got the ability to prevent and restrict the application from accessing your files, the registry, and the internet, okay? So what does this look like and mean for you in practice? Okay, so let's say, I'll go into my documents folder. Someone has shared a document with me. It might have come by way of an email or a Teams message. Over here, it's a bulletin. It's been circulated urging the user to click on that link in order to reset their password, okay? Now, you're probably all guessing what's going to happen here. It's a phishing link. Okay, I hover over it. We can see it's not legitimately going to office.com. In fact, it's trying to call PowerShell. Okay, now, if I throw out the window and door, all that security awareness training that, the company pays us, pays a lot of money for us to do, and I click on that link and I ignore the security warnings, luckily, the outcome of that is that there was no program registered to open the file. So yes, it was trying to call PowerShell, but because of this policy whereby I've restricted all the applications in this list from being called by Office, in this case Word, then PowerShell had no hope in being initiated from that, that incorrect or bad action there by clicking on that link, okay? So you can certainly select to say, well, only the applications in this list can be accessed, or everything but what's in this list can be accessed or called from the application in question. Again, this one being Office. Just to finish on ring fencing, another quick example is PowerShell itself, right, as a policy. So this policy here also has ring fencing enabled. And this time we're saying we don't want these 3 applications, just for your reference, BitLocker, IE, and VSS Admin being accessible from PowerShell. We don't want PowerShell accessing all our files, but it can, of course, access whatever you let it access. So if I've got some favorite scripts that I use daily, and I want them to be accessible from PowerShell, I can get very specific around the paths and folders, or even the file names that I would like to be accessible by exemption, okay, by PowerShell. And then I can also certainly allow for domain IP address exceptions as well. Now, during that learning period that I mentioned at the very start, we will learn any touch points by way of domains and IPs that PowerShell has reached out to. So PowerShell has made communication with either internal, external IPs, domains. We'll list them automatically here, and then you can certainly vet them and determine whether they make sense and whether there's something that you want to remain in place. But let's take, before I wrap up the ring fencing demonstration, let's take this script as an example. This script here is a backup script for me, but it can certainly be repurposed and misused to be an exfil script. So it recursively go through the documents folder on the target machine, and it will upload, it will exfil, it will send. I'm using a play on words there for certain reasons, and that's because malware is just software, right? For you, it might mean something different to someone else. So for me, it's my backup script. If I run it on Lindsay's machine without Lindsay's consent and knowledge, it becomes malware. I'm stealing his data rather than uploading the data. And so over here, you can see the Windows style is hidden because it's going to work for me in the background, right, while I work away on other things in my environment. Now, if I attempt to run this on my machine, which is protected with ThreatLocker with ring fencing applied, what you'll see when I right-click on my agent and go to the blocked items list is that all those attempts that were made were ring-fenced. So it did its job. I wasn't able, or the script, PowerShell specifically, wasn't able to retrieve what was in the documents folder. And even if it could, it wouldn't be able to reach the internet in order to send that off to that exfil server, that remote destination. So my argument, and hopefully I'm not arguing very hard with many people, that PowerShell doesn't typically need access to the internet. And again, we can set in place any exceptions that it needs. If it needs to communicate with 365 for patching and updates, that's totally fine. But outside of that, it doesn't typically need to touch everything on the World Wide Web, everything on the internet, every IP address external to our organization, and so forth and so forth. Okay, so that's the power of ring fencing and what it can introduce to your environment. Now, just before I pivot to storage control, and then we'll certainly take questions, if I quickly run into the hamburger menu over here, have a look at this list here. This is the Microsoft recommended block list. So this ties in very closely to Essential 8, and Lindsay, mentioned that we touch maturity level 3. So one of the ISM controls there is prohibiting the use of the recommended drivers. Okay, well, this is the recommended driver block list, I should say. So there are specific drivers and applications that Microsoft, have put into a list here. We reference the article on each of these, so that's their website. This isn't us making this up. This is Microsoft saying, hey, no, this is what we recommend that you should block, because it can bypass certain controls. And so the Australian government, the ASD, the SOCI Act, the Essential 8 compliance framework specifically has referenced that. So we make it very simple. You can cherry pick the ones you want, and you can simply add them to your environment, and away you go. They are deny policy actions. No further work required. Very, very easy and simple. Okay, so just to spend a couple minutes on storage control. So, as I mentioned on the slide earlier, storage control is a way to allow you or help you control access to repositories, folders, file types. Okay, so even just looking at USB, I have a policy in place. It denies all access to USB storage devices. But what I can do is, because we enforce top-down, and I have a permit policy in place above the deny, what we can do here is we can create a policy, which I've kind of half done, it's inactive, where I can say USB interface is permitted for use for these two specific USB storage devices. And they have been captured by serial number, in case you're wondering. As soon as you plug in one of these devices, ThreatLocker will scan, identify the serial number. It'll provide it to you as an administrator, so you can keep a repository of those now known and identified devices, and then use them within policies for future. So this policy is saying, you know what, Emil's 2 USB storage devices are permitted for use on any workstation that's running ThreatLocker, or maybe I say only on my specific workstation. But furthermore, only these 2 types of files can be read from or written to the USB storage device. And then furthermore again, if I want to make it an encrypted only policy, meaning the device must be encrypted in order for me to read it, well, then you can certainly flick the switch here and go with that. Now, speaking of Essential 8 on that sort of theme and topic, I've got a policy over here that allows me to prevent opening and saving of macro file types, okay? Along with CHM, HTA files as well, thrown those in there. So it's very simple to stay compliant, right, when it comes to those macro file blocking, right? And again, there's an Essential 8 bunch of controls there where they want you to harden access to your backups. We can help with that as well, again. So over here, I've got my backup share. This is the UNC path. And the policy has been configured so that way only my backup software, in this case Veeam, can access that backup share. If I go into my Explorer and I can see my backup share online and I try and access it, I won't have any hope of doing that. This will time out. The only way that I can gain access to it is from Veeam. So if I'm an attacker and I've come on and I've tried to commandeer PowerShell or command prompt and tried to access that repository using that tool, that application, it will not work. It will only work via Veeam, okay? And just to finish, in our community, we seed out best practice policies available to be downloaded very easily, just at a click of, literally like the click of the button, 2 clicks, you know, click once and then click again to download. And this is where we'll store our best practice policies, as I was saying, for you to use. 2 that I want to just touch on quickly is the ability for you to block access to your browser session cookies from every application on your machine except just the browser that needs access to it. So I will block all programs from accessing my session cookies, but then only allow Chrome to access Chrome's repository and then so forth with Firefox, Edge, Opera, etc. And then if you're running virtual machines in the same spirit, you can then block access to VHD files and then only allow Hyper-V to access those files, but not any other program, right? Because you may or may not be aware, VHDs can be unmounted, taken offline. Security tools, including ThreatLocker, whatever other tools you're using, can be removed. That drive can be remounted, and then before you know it, they've taken that server. They can use it as a foothold into the rest of your environment, or even just start encrypting things on that server alone. Okay? So certainly some really cool, I'll certainly use that word, cool, controls that you can put on in place to help you remain compliant and to, again, you know, just really reduce that surface area of attack and protect your environment. Okay. Now I'm going to pause there. Lindsay, I'll throw back over to you just to see how we're going for questions. But it is a very simple, quick demonstration. Obviously, you know, we can, you know, conduct more in-depth demonstrations whenever we need to, you know, but I'll throw over to Lindsay and sort of see how we're going for questions.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you so much, Emil. We did have a slide here again, sort of going through, you know, some of the different areas of the platform. Emil, I think you've covered it, a lot of the core features, and there's plenty more that's in development and coming through. In the interest of time, we might jump into questions because there's quite a few in there. But I think suffice it to say that, again, you would have seen from today just how much power and how much feature sets and benefits exist within this platform. It's, again, coming back to the reason of why we've partnered with ThreatLocker in the first place, is what they had a year ago and then what they have now, which is an ever-growing list of capabilities. And again, aligning to a lot of those frameworks that we need to align our clients to as well. So I'll just quickly jump into the questions. Emil, this might be one for yourself for the first one.
Sure.
Where's the ThreatLocker back end hosted?
Yeah, so the good news is we've certainly got presence here locally. So in Sydney specifically is where we've got our local data center that typically serves off our Australian-based customers.
Good. And again, we will see that a lot where you've got, the typical question of offshoring, etc. So no, thank you for that, Emil. Now, the next one I've got is how does this compare or contrast to EDR or endpoint protection? And I thought I might quickly kind of jump in, and then Emil, I'm going to be keen for your
Sure.
thoughts on this as well, because it's a question that I've been asked quite a few times, particularly when it comes to ThreatLocker. Look, I think probably in its simplest sense, it's a great question. I think that application allow listing, if we take it down to that, is an allow only model. As you just heard, zero trust block everything. So it's a prevention first approach. You take more of a EDR, so your endpoint detect and respond sort of solutions. And that's something where, again, it's looking for suspicious behavior. It's really trying to focus on the detection and investigation and how does it respond to that retrospectively. So the best answer that I have is compare or contrast is that they are actually, together are a really great layered defense. But I think the difference you sort of the best metaphor that I did read on the comparison of this was that something like allow listing is like locking your doors, and EDR is like having your surveillance cameras and alarms. And I really like that because I think that really does summarize it quite well. But I mean, I don't know if you had anything to add to that particular one.
Credit to you, Lindsay. You've summed it up perfectly. Yeah, look,
Excellent.
it's basically EDR will validate your primary controls, right?
Mm,
So if your primary control is that you're preventing what's not authorized, and there is a sense of malicious or suspicious activity, that's where the EDR can come into play.
yeah, no, exactly right. This was one that came through, and it actually came through before you went through the storage control part, but it is a good question. So, can we only allow corporate issued USB devices to run? I think you've sort of answered that, but I suppose specific to corporate, I'll let you quickly
Yeah.
recap.
Yeah, so I mean, typically in the corporate space, it will be a case of, IT department purchasing USB storage devices, seeding them out to staff that need them. And so they can obviously, as I mentioned, to your point, capture the serial numbers of those devices, populate them into a known list, and then start to utilize them in various different controls for various different personnel and staff, getting as granular as they need to. As you saw, I could get as granular as file type, whether it needs to be encrypted device or not. But yeah, absolutely, we can accommodate that, and it's quite a big hit in the in the corporate space for sure.
Definitely, definitely. Well, we might have time just for one more question. It's actually a really good one. It's how long does deployment take? And
Yeah,
yeah, again, I think we could probably both speak to this, but
yeah.
I'll let
Go
you
ahead.
quickly run through your thoughts first, and then I'll follow up.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, from a technical point of view, right? When we deploy the agent, the typical learning period is 21 days, right? But anywhere beyond the 7 to day point, we would start to review what's being learnt by the agent on the machine. Okay. Now, whether you're deploying a handful of devices or a larger number of devices, if the learning is taking place quite simultaneously, we will learn the majority of things that we uncover on the machine. And then when we go to that look back period and we sit down with an engineer and we understand, what might not have been learnt, and we finalize and fine tune and customize those final bits of the policy controls, we could get you underway in, anywhere from a matter of weeks, okay, to, depending on a very, very large deployment, maybe a couple months, right? And that's like really stretching it out. And that's if there are other, processes or internal processes that that organization might have in place that are potentially hindering upon a smooth, frictionless deployment. But from our perspective, we do a lot of heavy lifting with that agent. We can ensure that it's very smooth when you get together with one of our engineers on a call and go through that look back period. So yeah, it really does depend. But from our technical perspective, very, very quick time frame.
Perfect. I think you've answered it pretty well there with the whole learning part and then putting in
Yep.
the controls. You're quite right. So, Well, just in the interest of time, I've just seen that we've sort of got to the end of our slot today. So I wanted to very, very quickly just say on behalf of Huon IT and ThreatLocker, we really, really appreciate your time today and hope you got some good value from the information and the content that's been reviewed. As a next step, we'd be pleased to work with you to sort of learn more about how some of these solutions might fit into your cybersecurity strategies and obviously benefit your business. Definitely do encourage, as you'll see on the screen here, to have a look at the on-demand content on our website as well. This includes other content from our cybersecurity fundamentals series, as well as other areas as well. But again, with that lens of, bringing some considerations to the top of mind around, where your cybersecurity strategic focus should be looking as well. So once again, thank you so much for your time. Look forward to your inquiries and hopefully to assisting to secure your business further. Have a great day. Thank you.